So let's first remind ourselves about the roadmap of this course. So always we'll bring this roadmap in front of us so we don't forget. So as we discussed last time, we will be doing both the front end and the back end. And we'll start with the front end technologies to create the pages. And we've seen we need to learn 3 technologies to be able to do so. And to add front-end developer to our CV, we need to learn HTML that allows us to define the page content and the structure, and to describe the page content and the page structure. And we have CSS to enable us to style and to change the look and feel and the presentation of our pages. And then we have JavaScript to enable us to interact with our page. When the user, let's say, clicks some button, we write some piece of code to react to that click. So we'll see those in more details as we move forward. So inshallah, today we want to start with HTML. And before we dive into how we use it, we need to ask ourselves, first thing, with all these technologies, the first thing you need to ask yourself, what I can do with it. What are the capabilities of this piece of technology that we will be learning? And then for each capability, we will see how to do it. We always start with the what, then move to the how. So let us get started. So with the HTML, what we can do with HTML? So I want this to be interactive. So by the time we finish, at least you are halfway through grasping all what we discuss. So what we can do with it? Some of you maybe already did some things in the lab, yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is the layout. We learned some tags.
Okay.
Like listing stuff and writing like paragraph, headers, and the set of headers.
Okay, very good. Very good. So I know. So you will start with HTML made up of some HTML elements that are defined using tags. But before that, I want you to go one level up. Just think in conceptual way. When you use in HTML, what you can deliver, what you can achieve with it. Very good. We basically describe the page content. Yes, describe the page content and structure. That's the first thing we can use HTML for. Let's say if we go to QU website, can somebody describe in some way how this page is structured? In high level, yes, please. There's a header at the top. Very good, thank you. What do we find in this header? There are some links. Thank you very much. So there is some navigation link. So nav link. So the role of this part of the page is to provide what? Navigation. Navigation means what are the possible links I can visit. And then what I have here, some kind of header with some key messages that you want us to know. Something that is important and relevant, and they want us to pay attention to. So this is another header with some images that keep changing. And then what I'm doing now, I'm describing the page. I'm describing how the page is structured. There is a header there is a navigation bar. There is some header with some images inside. And what else do we have? There's some news. No, pictures. Pictures, yeah, there are pictures there. But what I mean here, what is the breakdown of this page? How it is organized? How it is structured? Very good. Sections. Very good. One section is all about news. Another section about important facts. Another section about events. Another section about latest research. Another section about some different things. Maybe studying as QU, current student, okay. And then there is, let's say in here, what do we have? What is this? What's this part that I'm highlighting? This is the footer. This is a footer with some contact details and let's say some image. So if I want to describe this page to someone in a meaningful way, what's the meaning? What I see in here? I see a navigation. I see a header with some images with important messages, and I see different sections in the page. One section about news, another one about facts, another one about events, another one about research. And within each section, what do we have? No, within each section. These are articles. So one article talks about this memorandum of understanding between QU and Abdullah bin Hamad Al Thani. Okay, and there is international conference on Sabha, and so these are different pieces of information organized into articles. So we have sections, and within each section, what do we find? An article. And within an article, what do we find? An image, a title of the article, some paragraphs in the article, some link. You see what I mean? So what I mean here, the HTML, the first role of HTML is to describe the content and the structure of our page. Of course, we will see how to do that, but just every page you go to, there is some kind of structure. And typically there is a navigation, some header, some main content, some footer. So that's the first role of HTML, is to describe the content and the structure of the page. What else we can do with HTML? Sorry? Basic styling. We need to be careful. What is the role of HTML? Only for the content.
What styling within the tag itself?
No, we need to be careful. Styling is to do with CSS, is the role of CSS. Now, you may be right, because traditionally, when the web started, there are some tags that you're not supposed to use. There is, for example, bold tag, I tag, you should never use. Those are, we call legacy, deprecated. They have not been removed because there are some pages that were written in the 80s and 90s. We cannot just throw them away. But for new stuff, you never use those. So you only use tags to do with describing the content and the structure. You don't use tags to do formatting. Of course, when you display a page, the browser will have some default style, some default way of displaying headers and paragraphs and so on. We will come to that, but need to be very clear. Never use HTML for styling or for positioning elements or for spacing. We don't use HTML for that. We only use it to describe the content of the page. What else we use it for? Sometimes we may have some tabular data. For example, you have your transcript. You go to Banner and you say, give me my transcript. What Banner will give you? A table. So one of the capabilities of HTML, you can display tabular data using tables. What else you can do with HTML? Very important, especially for us as developers. Forms, thank you very much. What do we use forms for? For collecting input from users. Super important capability of HTML, collect input from users using what? Forms. I'm sure you have filled so many web forms at many occasions. What else you can do? Display media content such as images, audio, and video. That's it. This is what you can do with HTML. Those are the main capabilities. Nothing else. Focus on these four. How many? Four. Describe the content and the structure of the page. Not how it looks, not where it is positioned, not the spacing between the elements, none of that. That is the role of CSS. What else we can do in HTML? Display tabular data. Only use tables when you have a really tabular data. Otherwise, don't use tables. Tables are not very flexible, not very recommended. Only use it for tabular data. For example, your transcript or some tables that you all know. We have rows and columns, then you may use tables. And then very important, if you want to collect inputs from users, you use forms. And if you have some media that you want to display, you can use HTML to do so. It's clear? The four capabilities. This is what you can do with HTML. Now, the next thing, we know now what we can do. What's the next step? How we will do it. Always go with this approach. What? And then the how. All right, so let us start. Before we go any deeper, let us start and ask ourselves, when I create an HTML, what I'm creating? Basically, I'm creating pages. So my app or my website will be made of one or many pages, one or many HTML pages, and a page is made up of a generic name. More generic. A section is a type of this generic name I'm looking for. Elements. Thank you very much. Very good. So a page is made up of elements. So a page is made up of elements. How do we define elements? Using tags. Using those of you that's familiar, we will see what these tags are. For now, so an element is defined using a tag. And these tags, do we just scratch ourselves and whatever name come to our mind, we just use? Those tags are standardized. Standardized means قضي الأمر فيهم. يعني there is no مجال للاجتهاد. You don't bring it from your own mind. You use them in a novel way, but the tags are predefined. Why the tags are predefined? Consistency. Yes. Why the tags are predefined? Who is everyone? All developer. Okay, yes.
So that it's you can use it on any machine.
Any machine. Who really displays our HTML pages?
CSS?
No. Who display? No, CSS is for styling and presenting it in a nice way. Browsers. So browsers, how many browsers we have out there? The famous ones. Many. We have Chrome, Edge, Firefox, and something called Internet Explorer, and so many others. Okay. If we don't have a standard tags, how can we have a consistent behavior and consistent? How can the web browser will help us to display the page? So that all browsers need to understand and use the same tags. And us as developers, we have to use the same tags. So that's why it is standard. And the organization taking care of this standard is called W3, W3C. It's an organization that is managing this standard. And from few years, they will introduce new features or new things. It's quite stable, not many changes, but those are standard. And in this standard, you will find experts from large organizations, from Google, from Microsoft, experts around the world. They come together. And even when there is a new suggestion, people contact them and they study those suggestions and they may make it as a standard at a certain stage. Yes, it's clear? All right, so let's start and see how those HTML pages look like. Let us start with here. Let me just remove this. And now what I can do, an HTML page, basically as part of the standard, this is not something came from my own mind. The W3C says if you want to create an HTML page is made up of elements. And those elements must be wrapped, must be inside a root element. And these root elements must be called HTML. Okay, you cannot call it something else. So you will do here HTML. You just type HTML and do tab. This is my first tag. This is my first element. So an element is a container where I can put some content inside it. So every page out there on the web, the billion pages we have, all of them start with the HTML tag. And inside the HTML tag, what do I have? Two parts. Again, this is part of the standard. You just need to know it and use it. Not much you think too much about it. Of course, it's carefully thought of. It's not like it's very powerful language, very well structured. But there are pieces that you just need to learn and use. You cannot really do much about them. They are already standardized. Every page must start with a root element, and that root element must be called HTML. Inside, what do we have? A head. And the other part is the body. You just type body because I'm using here VS Code. Type the tag name and press tab. It will create the element for you. So the element has a start tag and an end tag. So that's what HTML is made up of. It's made up of elements, and every element has a start tag. This is how the start tag is, the syntax of the tag. So you do less than, greater than, and that's the tag name. And then you go ahead and close it with less than, greater than, and the closing has slash. This is a syntax. Who created the syntax and decided it? W3C standard. Of course, there's somebody invented it, who invented HTML, and of course, W3C took over and it's taking care of it. I think somebody invented the syntax. Forgot his name. HTML inventor, some UK guy. He came here. Yes, Tim Berners-Lee. He's the inventor of HTML, HTTP. And of course, now it's standard. But the first idea came from him. Maybe he's also maybe part of the W3C, or maybe he's not interested anymore. I'm not sure. Who is the people here? Community groups. Just curiosity. It's nothing to do. Anyway, it's a bit more complicated, but you can know who is in these committees. These are international committees. You can know who is there. Usually the experts from major organizations, typically. All right. So we know now HTML page is made up of elements, and those elements start with a tag and with a starting tag and a closing tags, and those tags are standardized. And do we need to learn all of them? Impossible. So many of them. You just focus on, remember the 20/80 rule we discussed? We will focus on the most important 20% that is used in 80% of the cases. And then the rest you will discover with practice and as you progress. That's why when you go to job applications, many times they tell you, okay, we need 3-4 years experience, because that's where from the experience you will discover the other 80%. Okay, but to get you started, what we will learn in this course is more than enough to build something functional, meaningful, and you have a strong base to discover the remaining parts. Okay, so we said that an HTML page must have a root element, and this root element is called HTML. And then inside there are child elements, and these child elements are grouped into two parts. There is the head and there is the body. What do we find in the head? No, those are anything you put in the head is not visible to the user except the title. So the head is not for the consumer of the page, or not the reader of the page. The head we put in there, for example, keywords, description of the page. Those are for search engines and for crawlers. When they come to your website, discover your website, they may use the description that you have in your page to give you a small summary in the search results, for example. So yes, you put in there CSS, JavaScript, as we will see later on. So for now, let's just put a title. You don't need to create the tags yourself. Just type the tag name and press tab. It will go ahead and create. This is my first page. And then I'll go here. And inside here, I can create some content. Inside the body, I create some content that the user will see, the visitor will see. So here is H1. H1 is for header, the main header on my page. Remember, when you are creating an HTML page, it's exactly the same as creating some kind of report for your assignment. Let's say you have an essay, and you go ahead and create your essay. And hopefully when you submit it, you don't just open Word and start typing. What you will do before you submit, or while you are developing the content of the report or the essay, what do you do with the content that you write? You structure it. You structure it into sections, subsections, and each section you may have a header, a couple of paragraphs. When the meaning changes, you may go for a paragraph. And so exactly the same when you are creating some piece of content. In here, you are creating it in HTML format instead of Word. So in here, when you are creating your content, based on the role of the content, you choose the appropriate tag. So for example, here, I want to have let's say I want to have a page to describe this course. Yes, let's do this together. Very super quick page to describe this course. So this course is all about what? Remember, what is the breakdown of this course? Front end, the back. And within the front end, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And within the back end, how to read and write the database, how to generate content dynamically. Yeah. So I can, first of all, I have, what is the big header, the title of the whole page? What will be? So maybe I'll call it CMPS 350 content. Yes. And then this content is broken down into two parts. What are these two parts? So I'll do here H2. This is another section or another part of my page that will be breaking down the measure header. So the measure header is the content. The header 2 will be front end. Front end. And the second measure breakdown is the back end. And within this, we may have H3 to further describe the breakdown. So in the front end, what we will have? HTML, another H3, CSS, another H3, JavaScript, okay? And inside here, beneath this, I may have a paragraph to describe this. So P, because I don't have a lot of time, I'll just do here. There's a keyword in VS Code, nothing to do with HTML. In VS Code, you can type this lorem and put some number of characters you want. Tab, you create this random text just to simulate. So here is my paragraph, and I'll do the same for CSS. Here is my paragraph, and I can do here lorem 100. Okay, and I'll do the same. Oh, sorry. Okay, Control C. I'll do the same here. So basically, I'm defining the structure of my page. My page is made up of one measure header, and that measure header is broken down into two subheaders, and those two two subheaders are broken down in further subheaders. So I'll have in HTML, you can go for up to 6 headers. You have H1, H2, H3, up to H6. Yeah. So if I save, let me just save this guy, save, and then I'll go and open this page. So if I go here, this page, I think I put it in here. I'll open it in a Chrome. Here it is. And you can see here, here's the content that I create. So I have the big H1, this is H2, and this is H3. And this is a paragraph following this H3. Yes, please. Oh, yeah, okay. It is, I think it's to do with the projector, I guess. In my screen, it looks okay. Anyway, so that's basically, so although the headers, the browser, by default, the browser will render the page using some default style. Out of the box, the Chrome developers, the Google Chrome developers, they gave H1, you see they make it bold and big, H2, still bold but smaller, and H3 is small. But do we choose header 1, header 2, header 3? How do we choose them? How do we choose which tag to use? When we have a piece of content, what tag, how do we choose which tag to use to wrap that content? We have a content, we put it inside the tag. How do we choose the tag we will put? Sorry? Based on the structure, based on the role of that piece of content. What is the role of it? No. What is that?
If you have the paragraph and you wanted to bring the attention of the user, you will not write the title in H6. We'll try to use a bigger one like H2 or something to give it like a bigger title, like a size, so that they can like see it immediately.
Yeah, here you need to be careful. Like once you start talking about the size, that's not the role of HTML.
Yeah.
So you need to choose based on the meaning. What is the meaning of this piece of text? Is it a header? What type of header? Is it the major header or subheader or subheader? So based on the role and the meaning, not based on the font or the size or the positioning. That's not how we choose. So based on the meaning of the text. Okay. Is clear so far? Clear? All right, so let us do one more exercise together. Let me just come here and come to something more complex than our simple page. And let's now, remember we did this exercise together early on, and we tried to describe our QU page. What did we say? What's the first part? It's a navigation. What is the role? What is the meaning of that first piece of content in the page? What is the role of it? What's the meaning of it? Is what? Navigation. That's why it will be good to put it inside a nav tag. Okay. It's clear? So your menu will be inside a nav tag. This is very important it's meaningful for you as developers, meaningful to the browser, meaningful to some smart tools. You know, some people may have some visually impaired and they need some tools to read loud the page for them. That tool, the reading tool, will be so thankful if you describe the page in a meaningful way. So when they start reading the content, they may skip the nav because it's nothing to do with the actual content. You see what I mean? So maybe next session I'll show you the importance of choosing the right tags to describe and to structure your page. Okay, so the second part, what do we have in this second part? You see here we have some header with some images. So I can basically, what I can do, I have a nav followed by a header. This is different than the head of the page. This is different. So header, and inside this header, I may have many images. It could be. I could have here a header. no problem. I could have within the header, I have a nav, and I have a couple of images that I will wrap. Images, we will see them later on, something like this. Yeah, good idea. We can have a header. Within the header, I have a nav, and I have some images. What else do we have? What do we have? Sections. So that's good. We call it section. We go ahead and call it section. So here I have a section. And this section, let's say we'll have a header. Inside this section, there is a header. What is the first header? The first section we have? News. And I close. All right. I have another section, which is what? Facts. Yeah, you see here is facts. Another section for what? Events, yes? So this is how I describe my page. I have another section for events. And then at the end, I have what? What did we decide? What is this? Footer. So what I'm doing here with this HTML tags, I'm describing the structure of my page. So that these are the typical tags you use. You use, here it is. First of all, you use, this is a header. It has a navigation menu and some logos and some images. Then I have, maybe I can put in here the whole thing here inside the main. This is my main page, my main content. It's good to have indentations to communicate the structure. Yeah, and I close the main. And inside the section, what do we have? What did we say we have inside the section? An article. And I'll go ahead and close this article. And inside an article, what do we have? An article may have a header, another header. Within the article, it has a header. Maybe because it's the main header of the article will be H1. And if it's a big article, it may have H1, H2, H3, based on the complexity of that article. And it may have an image, for example, and a couple of paragraphs, yes? Based on the P, another paragraph. My keyboard is different right here.
It doesn't contain the actual article.
Yeah, it is fine. It is fine. Here, it's not really what I want to say. It is still an article. This one. I may have just H1 image and a link. Very good. Very good. This is how we want to do it. Sorry, just a second. Here it is. Oof. My keyboard is different. All right. So what I want to say here the link will be to another page. The link will be to another page. But this describes, in my opinion, describes quite nicely what we see in here. So this is still an article. You can see here. Oh, sorry. Here it is. The actual details will be in another page, but it's still an article. It has a small summary, title, and an image. This is an article. This is yet another article. It has an image, a header or a title, and a summary. And this is a hyperlink that will take me to another page to get more details about that article. Yes. So the idea here, if I want to describe the structure of my page, I use one of these headers. So one of these tags, Each of them has a particular meaning. Of course, the browser does not really care. The browser, whatever you put, it will display. You can put everything in a paragraph or a div, but that's not optimal. Like you are basically limiting the search engine capabilities. You are not giving opportunity to users to use sophisticated navigation browser plugins such as readers, voice readers. I will try with some plugins next time to show you a page with good structure and where the tools really like that structure and like that the page is describing itself nicely, rather than using just a generic tags. You can put generic tags, like instead of, you see here, instead of section, I can just put in here a div. And here will be a div, no problem. In fact, many people are using this. Sorry. Div is just a part of the page. Div is a division. Div is a generic name. Okay? It's a generic tag name. It's part of the page. We don't know what's the problem. By the way, we call these tags, these are new tags, by the way. In HTML5, it took 5 versions for this W3C to come up with this meaningful. It's an evolution. I mean, before people just use divs, paragraphs, headers, that's it. But with HTML version 5, I think around version 5 when it was. Sorry? No, search engines. Yeah, of course, they are not following our course. They didn't attend our course. If they do, even here, they are using divs. But we're not going to follow them. We're going to follow the best practice. What is the best practice? What is the best practice in HTML? Use meaningful tags and describe your content in a meaningful way. If you want to do a good job. If you want to do a lousy job, you just put everything as divs. Sorry, where is the view source? Inspect. Yeah, they are using a bunch of divs to do all of this. Not optimal. You see div. Do you have main? One main. Yeah, not. Do you have a footer? It's not bad. They are using a little bit of tags. Not too bad. They are using some footer. You can see here. No. Basically, div. It's our Egyptian fellows. What they use for generic stuff. Al-bita' or objects. It's a generic thing. Anything can fit in there. That's what a div is. So, but you don't confuse people by using some generic stuff. If you know what it is, say what it is. Yes? It's clear? So that's what a div. A div is the last resort. You tried hard, you say, what's the meaning of this piece of text or this content? What's the role of it? Is it a header? Is it a footer? Is it a navigation? Is it an article? If you run out of options, then you say, this is a div. Or if you want to group things that are not groupable under one of these semantic tags, then you may resort to a div. So div, you avoid it and you use it as last resort. Except the lazy guys, the lazy developers, they don't even need to think. They just div. But that's not optimal. What is the best practice? Use semantic tags and describe your content based on the meaning. Yes, exactly the same as you're writing an article or an essay or some like a log, let's say, log piece of content. So you are aware of its structure. You are aware of the role of each piece that you wrote. Say so, like describe, not only put the content, but describe what's the meaning and what's the role of each piece of content. Is clear? I think maybe I will convince you more next time, because I'll have to bring some tools just to show you a page with this versus a page with this meaningful tags, and you will see the major difference. So if let's imagine, although I will demonstrate it next time, but if I have some automated reader, let's say if I have some automated reader, I wanted to read the content of the page. Because I'm putting here header and navigation, it will just skip this. It's not important. It will go to the main and maybe zoom into one of the articles and start reading, for example. So the more meaning you put, the better. The more meaning you put, the better. Is clear? All right. So header, and we have nav, we have the main, we have a section and an article. What's the difference between a section and an article? By the way, all of those are containers. All of those tags are containers for other elements. Yes, are containers for other elements. So in a nav, what do we find usually? Links. In a nav, you will find links. In a header, you will find a nav typically. Inside the header, you will find a nav, and you might find some images for logos, for images that are scrollable, that you can communicate some key marketing messages or key messages you want your visitors to be aware of. Now, section and an article, what's the difference? That's one way of usage. So articles that are belonging to a particular category could be grouped into a section. So articles can be grouped by theme into a section. So for a news website, for example, you may group articles into, let's say, local news, international news, sport news. And within the sport news section, you will find many articles. That's one usage of sections. So sections could be used to group articles. It can also be used to do what? To break down a large article into sections. To break down a large article into sections. So you may have a large article, you may say, this is an introduction section, this is the conclusion section, these are each mihwar of the article or each major topic, you can group it into sections. So two ways of using sections. Sections could be used to group articles, and sections could be used to break down an article into meaningful sections. Okay, what about the side? What do we use the aside for typically? Usually some kind of sidebar, not related to the content, some kind of annoying advertisement, you may put it on a side, or some alert or some kind of announcement, you might put it on a side. This is not part of the main content. That's not what you came for. It's some extra stuff. So you put it in a side. And then in the footer, very typical, you might find some contact details, some links, and like YouTube channel or Twitter account and so on. Typically, you find typically some kind of links and contact details. Now, these tags, they define the logical structure, how your page is conceptually structured. They don't define the physical layout. They don't define where the footer will be in the bottom of the page, the side will be on the right of the page, the header will be on the top. Who decides the layouts and the positioning? CSS. So that's why we call these tags is for a logical structure. The physical layout and the look and feel and the positioning will be controlled by CSS. Is clear so far? Okay, moving on. I think I already explained this. So article section. So this is what I explained here. I can have the main, and the main has many articles, as you see. So each article, it's meaningful on its own. If you open the article, it's a piece of content that you can read and make sense of. You can put it inside an article. Now you can, if you have a large article, you can structure it and break it down into multiple sections. For example, here I have an introduction section, the content section, and the summary section. Now, div, as I mentioned, try to make it as the last resort. Only use div if you run out of choices. Try your best to use one of these meaningful tags. That's basically the recommendation for HTML when creating HTML content. To use the most appropriate tag as much as possible. Don't be like the lazy developer. They just use div everywhere and they don't put the effort to choose a more meaningful one. Okay, let's move on. Structuring the page is clear. We use these semantic tags. And then the next thing is you can display tabular data. To display tabular data, you can use a table tag. Let me just show you. This is how it looks like. So I create basically open the tag with a table and close the tag with /table. And then within the table, I can define table row, TR, and close the row. This is another row. This is the third row in my table. And inside the row, I have columns, which I define using TD, which is table data. So it's a structure. So table is made up of rows, and rows are made up of columns. That's basically the idea of the table. You can go more sophisticated if you wish by saying, okay, my table, it has a table T head, T foot, and a T body. So you might have a header, the actual content, and a footer. Sometimes, you know, the columns, the head, usually it has the column names. You may style it later on. We will see how to do that. You may style it in a different way. The footer, you may have some totals or you may style it in a different way. So you can distinguish between the body and the actual head and foot of the table. Or you can keep it simple and have the table as a set of rows. It's up to you. So the more details, of course, the better. The more meaningful you go, the better. The more you describe your content in a meaningful way, the better. It will be meaningful to other developers. It will be meaningful to sophisticated tools that users may use. Okay. Of course, every little concept I have in here, there is an associated example, and you will also practice this in the lab, of course. So the last thing I want to show you is the media tags. If you want to display images, video, audio, super simple again. For the image tags, very easy. You just use an IMG without closing tag. So the image tag, because it cannot have a child elements, you don't need to have a closing tag. You just do image, and in here it has two properties: source and an alternative text. This is optional. So this one you are describing the content of this image. This is for two roles. For this, like for tools that, like, let's say some tools that read the page. If somebody is not able to see the image, that reader will read the alternative text describing what is in that image. Or if the image is not available, somebody deletes it or something happened to that image, the browser will display this alternative. So two rows of this alternative. That's it. This is what an image is. It could be an image that is locally available on your computer, or it could be a link on somewhere on the web. Yes, please. The alternative text will appear in the, let me see, the alternative text. Let's just do one together, super quick. In here, let's go here. Let me come here and say, this is image, and this is source equal, and this is alternative, and I will say QU logo, yeah? I close the tag. There's no need to close this image. Some special tags like image, and later on we will see inputs, they don't have a closing tag because they cannot have children. There's no need to close the tag. So if I go here, let's just try to see this, copy the URL, copy the link address, and I'll put it in here. Oh, no, that's not what I want. I want to copy the actual image address, copy the image address, and I'll paste it in here. Okay, let me save this file. And let me refresh this page. Yeah, here is the QU logo. You see, if I hover over it, no, it doesn't show. But if let's say I made a mistake in here. I put in here 2. Save. That image that does not exist. Let me refresh. You can see here the QU logo appears. Now, if maybe next time I'll show you let's say, a page reader. If I visit this page, it will read loud for me the alternative text. So that's basically the role of the alternative. It's optional, but highly recommended because you want your pages to be accessible by all people. Now I will let you go. For the video, similar, we have video tag, similar to the image tag, and we have an audio tag to play an audio. So next time, inshallah, I will quickly show you the video audio tag, and then we'll spend most of the session on forms. That's the most important skill for you as web developer to master, how to create forms. All right, thank you very much. See you next time.